Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Lost and Founder. This is episode 7 and I'm pleased to say this week is a slightly different episode. So one, I'm recording a little bit later in the week. As I've been doing these, it's been slipping later and later, but I don't know if that's a trend that will continue. It can't continue forever, otherwise I'll never do a show ever again. Which is not my goal. This week, though, I'm recording on a Thursday, and that's because today I've been doing an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, on Reddit with the Reddit SaaS community, as in Software as a Service community. And I thought it would be helpful to just share some of the questions I've received as part of the AMA today. Only a handful, and I thought it would just be a good way to structure the show, and let's see if it's helpful or interesting or different. Well, it'll certainly be different, and hopefully it's helpful for other people out there. So yeah, let's tuck in and try this out. So yeah, episode 7, here we go. The AMA, I started with a Twitter Spaces session with Daniel, CH Daniel on Twitter. I'll link his Twitter in the show notes. And Daniel asked me a bunch of great questions live, and I thought while it was recorded, I thought it might be good to just relay those questions on this show, and hopefully they can be helpful for people. And I guess, yeah, there's a couple of questions I just wanted to rattle through, and you know, I'd like to try and keep the show to 15, 20 minutes, and that's certainly my goal today, and not to go too far over. But I think one of the things I realized talking with Daniel for over an hour today is that it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole on many of these topics, and could easily spend all day talking about any of them. But the first question, or one of the first questions, I couldn't remember exactly how it was phrased, but Daniel asked me about our team. He had already met a couple of other members of the team, Beth and Russell, who are both on the Twitter Spaces live audio session. And Daniel was asking me about essentially how's the team evolved and changed, and how do we work with people that are so driven and dedicated. And I thought it was just generally quite a good topic to start with, because I think with the world of company building, and especially with the world of entrepreneurialism and startups, I think a lot of the focus often goes to the founder or the CEO or the person at the top of the supposed hierarchy of the company. And I think it is important to try and emphasize that obviously companies are made up of many people, and I think it's a big reason why I love running GoSquared and running a company, is that I get to work with some fantastic people, and I get to, you know, for the most part, choose who I work with and enjoy that experience. And I always feel very honored that anyone would choose to join us on this journey and join me on this journey, because they're putting a lot of trust and faith in me, but also in what we're doing. And I think from my perspective, one of the things that has evolved or changed over the last year and a half, 2 years, obviously since the global pandemic, is that for us as a company, we used to be entirely in one office. We used to all be around a set of tables in an office in central London, and we had a very close-knit culture in the office. We would all get lunch together as a team. We would get in at similar times, leave at similar times. And we had a real routine as a group of people. And there was a lot that I loved about that, and I think everyone enjoyed about that. And I think we were quite fearful that by going remote, that as we were forced to do it early in 2020, I think we were worried that we would lose a lot of our culture, and that things would get worse, and that things would decline from where we were. And you know, I can't say that going remote has made everything better, or solved problems left, right, and center, or that everything's unanimously been better. But I think in many ways, the pressure to go remote encouraged us to rethink a lot of things that we had always taken for granted, or that we'd not considered changing or testing out or experimenting before. And since going remote, I think over time, and especially as at least London and the UK has been starting to open up a little bit more, thankfully. We've been finding new, more, I guess, adventurous or different ways of working together as a team. And I think over time we've seen the rigidness and the structure become a lot more flexible as a team. So people obviously working in their own environments and increasingly choosing where they work, and not necessarily at home, but from coffee shops or going into an office every now and again if they want to. But also finding more flexibility in when they're working and when they're not, whether it's starting a little bit later or starting earlier. And I think overall those changes have actually had a really positive effect for a lot of the team. And I think a lot of teams are often worried about some of those changes. And for me, a lot of it really comes down to having shared trust within the team, that you trust team members, you trust that people will be working. And I think maybe I don't know if there's a generational divide there, but often when I talk to family members, and whether that's parents or other relatives, there's often this assumption that people working remotely, like it's hard to see what they're doing, or they might be skiving off work. And I think for the most part, the opposite has been true from what I've seen as a team over the last year and a half, and that actually people are working far harder and more. And I think part of my job is to try and help people find the balance in their daily lives, to try and make sure they don't work themselves into the ground, and have that balance between what they're doing in the working day and what they're doing in their personal lives, and trying to make sure they have clearer division between the two. But I think all of the benefits we've seen from the team having more flexibility and autonomy largely stem from having good trust in the team, and making sure that we all communicate with each other as effectively as possible. And it's obviously tested us on many fronts, but I think by hiring good people that you really do deeply trust to do their jobs, and by giving them what they need, that trust is earned on both sides. And I think a lot of my role as a CEO is really about helping to give the direction, and enough direction that people can go and do their jobs, and not so much direction that people feel I'm trying to do their job for them. Trying to really unblock people, and making sure that people can achieve what they need to do, and are not held up by me or by other people. And by just making sure I try to hold the highest standards of communication within the team. And I definitely know I've got work to do on all of those, but that's sort of where I see increasingly my role as a CEO. And I think it's really important, and arguably more important than ever as a remote team of autonomous driven people. So that's pretty much one of the first questions I got, and hopefully that's a helpful answer. One of the next questions I got was around getting publicity for GoSquared. It was a bit more of a sort of practical software as a service, business building kind of question, but I thought it was quite a good one. And Daniel had clearly done some research into the company and me and what publicity we've received in the past. But over the years, GoSquared has received a lot of publicity for various different. So we've been in tech publications like TechCrunch, but we've also been in very well-known public publications and been featured in much broader, wider audience news channels and things like that. So we've been featured in the BBC, on the BBC News. We've been on Sky News. I've been on Bloomberg before. I've been on the cover of Square Mile, as Daniel mentioned in the AMA, and the company has been featured in almost like every news outlet that I can think to imagine for one reason or another. Not to mention all sorts of other things we've done, like getting into industry blogs and getting mentioned by big names on Twitter and things like that. And so I guess, some of the questions were really around like, how have we managed some of that? And I thought initially I was quite humbled because I hadn't really thought of it as anything too amazing or special. But in total, I think there's a lot perhaps that is helpful to share from what we've done to achieve some of that. And it made me reflect on actually some of those achievements we've had. And I think in many ways, a lot of the things we've done well in terms of publicity have often been fortunate encounters and lucky situations and timely opportunities that we've jumped on. And I think a lot of them come from being quick to respond and quick to act. And in the session today, I picked up a book called Newsjacking a while ago, and it was featuring lots of bigger name brands that have jumped on the news cycle to further their own brand image. So all sorts of high street names and big global brands jumping on various news articles. I'm trying to think of examples. Like, I think that, I'm struggling to think of an example off the top of my head here, but I think that book inspired me quite a bit with some of our approach. And when you look at some of the things we've done, a lot of them have been very timely and opportunistic. And I guess the main takeaway from that, I think I would say, is that often if you want to find exposure and awareness, like, you can't plan for it all. And if anything, the thing you need to plan for is making that time to be responsive, to be able to react to things happening. And so every day there is news. Every day there is something new that people are talking about. Whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, there is always a news cycle, whether it's the latest Twitter trend or the latest headline on BBC News. There's always something new that people are talking about. And every time that happens, there's possibly an opportunity for your company, your brand, yourself to have something to say about it. And every time you have something to say about something, that's an opportunity for some exposure. Obviously, you don't want to be doing that every day, and you don't want to be doing that all the time. And there are topics you want to stay well clear of. But I think it's a fascinating and often undervalued approach. And I think the tendency in tech and in SaaS in particular in our industry is to look at very clear-cut, very measurable opportunities and marketing tactics that have very precise, clear success or failure measurement. And a lot of these opportunities, by their very nature, they can't be measured. And even when you've done them, it's very hard to see sometimes what the impact is or directly attribute any impact from it. But I think in many ways with marketing, you have to just be comfortable with the idea that a lot of what you do marketing wise can't be accurately measured, and that if you only do what you can measure, then you'll end up overall with a very dry and probably ineffective actually marketing strategy, and that you always need to be doing things that are hard to measure, that maybe are even almost impossible to justify with numbers alone. And I would encourage you to just put time aside for jumping on opportunities and being relevant on a daily basis, and try it for a week, try it for a few weeks, and see if there's anything you can jump on, maybe putting a little bit of time aside each day, and give it a go and see what happens. And I wish you the best of luck trying that out. The final question I wanted to talk about on the show this week was, I thought, a question that led to a much deeper conversation than maybe I was expecting. And it was, what advice would I give to my 20-year-old self? And the question itself made me feel quite old, because it feels like only yesterday I was 20 and I am now the grand old age of 30. And it certainly made me reflect on things. And in the short space of time I had on a live audio broadcast on Twitter, I tried to think about the most significant things that I wish I had known when I was 20. And I think probably, well, I know what I said on the broadcast, and I think it still remains true, having reflected on it for maybe an hour or so more. And that is that getting clear with yourself about your own goals and what makes you happy and what doesn't make you happy in life is really, really important. And the clearer you can be with yourself about what you want, then the easier a lot of other things become. And I think this is especially true for people that are in a small team or looking to start a business. The number of times I talk to other founders and they're asking me for advice on whether they should go and raise funding and how best to do that, and whether they should target this customer or that customer, or whether they should build this or that. And frankly, I'm a terrible person to give an answer to that, because I can give you my opinions, but those are my opinions. And there are no right or wrong answers to what you as an entrepreneur or a founder should do. In reality, what you should do is try and get clear on those answers for yourself. Because anyone who says one way or another and that's the only way is almost certainly wrong. Because you can build a company in so many different ways. You can choose so many ways to raise money. You can choose to build a company without raising money. You can choose to build a business that focuses on revenue growth at all costs. You can focus on building a business that is vision driven, and monetary revenue figures come a lot later or never at all because you want to be acquired. You can not want to build a company at all and go and work for someone else. All of these things that come down to you as an individual and getting clear on what you want to do. And that's why, in terms of advice, I would give myself the advice, if I was talking to my 20-year-old self today across the table, I would give myself the advice to spend more time thinking about what I want and getting clear on what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. And one of the best ways I have found to finally start getting clearer with myself on that is to work with a coach, and to find someone who will be there to help guide you through that thinking. And the reason I suggest getting a coach is because if you're anything like me, then it's very hard to answer some of these questions sitting on your own, or like writing in your own notebook without any external prompting or helping. It's very easy to put answering those questions off because they feel like they're not very urgent and no one's going to know definitely whether you've done them or not. But I find working with a coach, and I've worked with a coach for over a year now, to be incredibly valuable for forcing me to put time aside to think about myself and what I am struggling with, what I'm excited about, and what I want. And every few weeks I have a session, and mostly that session is me talking. It's vocalizing and getting out what's in my head. And the reason a coach is so valuable and helpful is that they don't spend much time at all talking, but they ask choice questions and good questions to help guide your thinking, what you're saying, and to help you surface a lot of answers that you already have within yourself. And I think that's incredibly valuable and incredibly powerful, to realize that actually so many answers to the big questions you already have inside you somewhere. You just need to find a way to unlock them, and working with someone else and talking with someone else can be the difference between those things staying locked up in your head forever and you actually doing something about them step by step, day by day. So I hope that's helpful. So there we have it. 3 questions from the AMA today. I could have done probably about 10 questions, maybe more, and I could have done a lot more to talk through any of those questions. If you would like me to do another show like this, please let me know, because there's plenty more where that came from. And if it was helpful, if it was a good format, if it was a better format, if it was a worse format, I really want to hear from you so that I can keep iterating and improving the show. And if you've got questions you want to ask, then please chuck them my way, and I'll do my best to read them out. In wrapping up the show, I always like to do a few little action steps. I'm winging this a little bit, but I think pretty much overall, I would say in terms of the first point on the team, try to, as a founder, I think I would say first and foremost, try to make sure you're spending your time giving people direction, unblocking them, and communicating clearly with them. I'd also say that building trust within the team starts with hiring great people and being really diligent with your hiring process. And then also just make sure once you've hired great people that you give them the space to be autonomous and live to their full potential within your team, and give them as much as you can, what they need, and get the hell out their way when they don't need you. The second one around publicity and getting more publicity, I think the one thing I'd just encourage on that one is just try to put time aside for the unexpected and be comfortable with the knowledge that not everything you do can be measured, and actually some of the most valuable, impactful stuff often is extremely hard to measure. And just open yourself to the opportunity of doing things that maybe have some risk and maybe have some uncertainty, but that could be good opportunities, and test it out, try it out, and see what happens. And then last but not least, giving advice to my 20-year-old self as an age-old 30-year-old, make time for yourself and get clear with what you want and what you want to do. And the best way in my eyes to do that is to find someone who can be a coach for you, and someone who can on a regular basis talk with you, listen with you, and help you unlock what you already have inside. So I hope that's been a valuable session. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in. I'm sorry for it being a day late this week, but I hope you can forgive me, and I very much look forward to chatting with you again next week. And if you have any more feedback, just share it with me at any time. I'm James J. Gill on Twitter, and drop a note in the podcast player of your choice if you have feedback on the show and want to share it with other people. It really helps get more exposure to the show and continue to grow the show, and helps encourage me to keep doing these. So thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.